It's Steelers OTAs week, but we're going to start off with a mailbag Monday answering your questions that you called in to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show in your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 back in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. All right, Steelers fans, we had a good weekend. Hope you got to get out a little bit. There were some tornadoes touched down on Friday in Pittsburgh. That was scary. But let's get into what this week is going to be a little bit. We know OTAs, we're going to be able to be there Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We've talked a lot about Cam Hayward not being there. If you missed those episodes, go back and check out last week's. But I wanted to take today because we've been focusing a lot on things that were developing, things that were happening. We didn't get to answer some of you guys' phone calls that you've dropped on us over the past couple weeks. So today we're going to try to get through a bunch of them. We have several we'll get to today, and then I'm going to try to sprinkle other ones in throughout the week. And as time rolls on here. So if you don't hear your question come on here today, do not worry. You will be brought in at some point. We're getting a lot of people. You guys have dropped a lot of great questions on our hotline. And as always, to get on the hotline, you call 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from, and keep your question under a minute, and you'll get a chance to get on the show with your question here to the Locked On Steelers podcast. And we start with this question from Michael all the way out in Las Vegas. Take it away, Michael.
Hi, Chris. This is Michael Hopkins from Las Vegas, Nevada. I just had a question on our quarterback situation. I'm excited to see what Russell and Justin can do this season, but what do you see them doing after this season as far as a quarterback goes? Do you see them trying to re-sign one of those two or both of those two, or drafting a quarterback, or what? Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Michael. And I'm again appreciate everyone who calls into the show, 412-223-6644. Now, the reason I led with Michael's question, because it delves into probably the thing that we're all going to be trying to ask on Tuesday. No one in Pittsburgh media has got an official on the books record chance, I think, to talk to Justin Fields. Like, we've all had the chance to talk to Russell Wilson. Well, actually, not all of us, but he did speak at the facility, but everyone's wanting to see what's Justin Fields' stance on this. How is he handling everything? What will he be like when he talks to the media scrum for the first time? And how will Russell Wilson do with him right around him? That's going to be one of the biggest topics that gets talked about all offseason. And Michael kind of tips at not just this, but also how does it play into next year? So first, Michael, let's get to your question by starting where we're at now. Right now, it is presumed Russell Wilson's going to be QB1. He's at least going to go into training camp holding that pole position, and they'll have technically a competition. What's most likely going to happen is Russell Wilson's just going to be QB1, and that's going to be that unless Justin Fields is just lighting it up day and night, and Russell Wilson is just falling off the bandwagon entirely. I doubt both of those things happen. One might, but I doubt that both of those things happen to the degree that force the Steelers' hand in this situation. But I do think the Steelers have put themselves in a situation where they're hedging their bets at the quarterback position. What they're probably doing this year, to answer your question, Michael, Omar Khan's going to make it so that, hey, if Russell Wilson is the guy, guess what? Steelers are going to be able to get a chance to be like, hey, you want to stick around and keep being the guy for an organization? Because let's say if Russell Wilson's really good and the Steelers are really good because of it, well, then all of a sudden, the Steelers, Russell Wilson said he wants to win Super Bowls. Why would you leave the organization that you started that with, or that you got back to competing at that level with? You only got a few more years left in the NFL. Why not stick this out for a decent contract that wouldn't cost too much to break the bank and break up this team that really supported you this whole time? I think that's one angle that they could take. But let's say Russell Wilson's just decent. And Justin Fields is kind of looking pretty decent coming off the bench, and you're excited to see what he has. Maybe you let maybe Russell Wilson does just enough that gets him a moderate contract somewhere else, and then you say, you know what, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make keep Justin Fields around. He'll have a chance to be the number one QB quarterback the next year, and then maybe they do draft a quarterback maybe in the middle rounds to kind of learn behind Justin Fields, and then they give that a shot. But here's the thing, Michael. I don't think that we're going to have a definitive answer. I don't think that the Steelers themselves have a definitive answer for what they want to do next year at quarterback. I think what they're doing, if you're looking at it from Omar Khan's perspective, is they are aligning themselves up with as many possible good outcomes as they can. Russell Wilson works out, great. You have him for a few years. He can be your veteran quarterback that leads your team and resets the leadership on the offensive side. Justin Fields, your guy, great. He's a young quarterback. He'll develop into things, and he'll be part of this new age coming. But if neither of them are the guy, well, then you keep one of them for a not expensive price, and you work at trying to find the next guy soon, whether it's this draft or the draft after coming up. But I think that's the thing the Steelers are putting themselves in right here. There's no definitive plan. I'm sure in the heart of hearts, Omar Khan and Mike Tomlin would love it if Justin Fields was just what everything he was at Ohio State for the Steelers, and all the bad things that people saw in a Chicago tape just went away. And then he's amazing. I'm not saying that can't happen. I actually really like Justin Fields. I think that he can develop. But I think if you're the Steelers, you can't afford to put your eggs all in one basket. I think that's what they're avoiding doing right now, until they feel that they have a guy who proves that he can be the franchise quarterback long-term for the Steelers. This is what it's going to be like. They're going to hedge their bets. They're going to keep guys around that they think can compete with each other until they find the guy that they think, okay, this is the guy who we built our franchise around. This is the next Ben Roethlisberger, Terry Bradshaw. Let's build around that guy. And I think of these two, Justin Fields has the better chance to be that, just because he's younger and he can develop. I think Russell Wilson, I think he can be a very good quarterback for the Steelers if he plays at his peak at the stage of his career that he's in. I just don't know how long he can, if he does that, how long he could do that, and how long the Steelers would want to commit to that. And if you're the Steelers and let's say Russell Wilson goes crazy. Let's say 40 touchdowns. He's not throwing 40 touchdowns. I'm just giving an outrageous number here. Let's say he throws 40 touchdowns. Then all of a sudden, he just prices himself out. He's like, listen, thanks Pittsburgh. See ya. I'm going to go make $40-50 million next year because someone wants me again. And the Steelers aren't going to pay that for a quarterback right now, especially a quarterback that's only going to be around for 2 years. What they're probably going to do is they're probably going to keep Justin Fields, and say, all right, well, that's why we got you. Here's a short-term deal. It's not a whole lot of money. Prove us that you can play within this system. And I think that's what the Steelers are hoping develops, is something along the lines of one of these guys falling into that role and being able to be the guy that they rely on, or at least being the bridge until they find the next guy there. So it's a good question, Michael. And again, I appreciate when Steelers fans come from all walks and they come from all parts of the country. We got people from out of the country that are going to be asking questions on the show, and we got a lot more of those questions to get to here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We still got a lot to discuss. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the number one sportsbook in America. It's playoff time in the NBA and the NHL, and it's getting oh so close to the championship times for both leagues, and as well as baseball being in full swing. That makes FanDuel your number one destination to place bets on every single game. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 or more bet. That's $150 you can use on point spreads, money lines, player props, and so much more. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, and all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to take advantage of this offer today. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon for new customers to get $150 back in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. And that's from FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our show here, answering your questions here on the show. Again, you could call into the show at any time to the hotline at 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from, and keep your question under a minute, and we'll try to get you on the show to answer your questions here. But let's keep rolling here. We have a lot to get to in this show. We got Trace, a returning caller from Lawrence, Kansas. Trace, take it away.
What up, CC? This is Trace from Lawrence, Kansas. I had a question about sort of what the offensive identity is going to look like going forward. The other day on the show, I think you were talking about BMAC or Ike Taylor. I can't remember which one. But one of them crediting the defense's long-standing success to just how much continuity there is from player to player and generation to generation on that defense. After the news that we're not picking up Najee's fifth-year option, we've got Dan Moore, who's been around a while, prime trade candidate. We've got a 300-yard tight end and Pat Fryermuth, who's been around a while. And not to discredit him, but it's just we haven't had Steelers offensive production, and that's not being handed down, it doesn't look like. What's the future look like because of that? Are we seeing a distinct changing of offensive identity and formation? Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Great question, Trace. And again, you can call in just like Trace did at 412-223-6644 to get your question in. Trace, I think you hit at the heart of what the Steelers are doing here. It is a complete upheaval of what the offense has been because they haven't. And to answer your question about who I was talking about, I was actually talking about Ryan Shazier because I had him as a guest on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, which is the other show that I do all the time there, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Go check that show out. Same places that you get locked on your podcasting apps and on YouTube. I do the same thing there, and it's great. I talk to all our Post-Gazette guys. We also talk other sports there. Awesome place to work. But there I talked to Ryan Shazier, and one thing that he talked to me was just about like, hey, like when he came in and he was drafted in 2014, when he came in, Lawrence Timmons set the tone, but Lawrence Timmons got it from Casey Hampton and Troy Polamalu and James Harrison, and then Ryan Shazier and Cam Hayward adopted it, and then Cam Hayward and Ryan Shazier were part of passing it down to TJ Watt, and then Minkah Fitzpatrick, and now you see that there is a consistent passing down of the torch of leadership on defense that has happened and has allowed the defense to continue to set the tone year in and year out for the Steelers, and always to be, when Mike Tomlin talks about that standard, it's easier for the defense to reach that standard, I think, because they've had the leadership that's passed, that's had succession plans, and they've worked and they've had talent come behind them. Excuse me. But the offense had a clear cut where that did not happen. And part of this was not by design. It was just unfortunate luck for the Steelers. The major leaders of the offense in the 2010s, when they were at their peak and they were playing very well, were these players: Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, Marquise Pouncey, David DeCastro. Those were the big five of the offense. And yes, Ramon Foster was a good leader and locker room guy. Alejandro Villanueva contributed. There were other good pieces in that era. That's not to say that other guys didn't also, contribute, and do things like that. But those were the stars. Those were the guys that everyone built around, right? And what happened to those stars? Le'Veon Bell left because they offered him a contract. He wanted more guaranteed money. He never showed up. That there was no transition of anything there. They just had to figure out life without Le'Veon Bell. Antonio Brown went full Antonio Brown. What you gonna do about that? Then the three guys that you thought, okay, well, these guys can be the torch passers. Marquise Pouncey, his injuries add up over his career. He ends up retiring after 2020. And they think, okay, well, guess what? We got David DeCastro. He'll be the guy. Then that next spring camp, in fact, in these very OTAs and mini camps that we're talking about right now, in the 2021 season, when he was supposed to be the big guard returning for the Steelers, he suffers an injury that ends his career. So then within a span of 4 seasons, within a span of 3 seasons, the Steelers lost 4 of those 5 guys. And then by the end of that season that David DeCastro was supposed to play in, that was Ben Roethlisberger's old man year. That was his last year in the league. And there was no quarterback for him to pass down anything to because it was Mason Rudolph. And him and Mason Rudolph never got along. So, yeah, that's what happened there. And what's happening now is the Steelers I think this is a big reason why they got Russell Wilson. They got him to reset the locker room. They got him to come in and say, hey, I know what it's like to be on a winning team. I know what it's like to be on a losing team. I know the difference, and I know what it takes, so let's set this tone. And that's not to say that guys like you mentioned, Pat Freiermuth, that's not to say that Pat Freiermuth can't be part of something like that or can't be a big part of that or Najee Harris or Broderick Jones or any of these guys. But I do think it takes a guy that everyone can get behind. I think they were hoping Kenny Pickett would be that guy. It didn't work out that way. Now they're getting a guy who's done that for multiple teams. And that's where I think Russell Wilson's going to come from. But also, it needs to come in an offense that's going to lead to the like you talked about, productivity has to be part of it, because if you're not producing on the field, if you guys aren't winning, no one's galvanizing anybody. It's not just rah speeches that wins. It's showing up in the big moments and doing your job and showing that, hey, if we all do our jobs, we can win football games. That's the mentality they want to get out of these guys. That's what they want to see develop here. And I think it takes a system that makes the offense go. It takes it doesn't just take Russell Wilson. It takes a quarterback that can lead in that system. And it takes people to get behind the system and say, hey, follow us to victory. That's what the Steelers defense does. That's what allows for guys to kind of come up. I mean, that's what helped Alex Highsmith. He didn't have to come in and recreate what the pass rush was with the Steelers. He just had to come in and play what Bud Dupree did and improve it and make it his own style and pair with TJ Watt. And the transition was seamless there. Joey Porter Jr., even though the Steelers didn't have a long-standing cornerback room, he had a defense around him that said, hey, this is the standard. We expect you to live up to it. Let's go. And now Joey Porter Jr. is playing well. That's what the Steelers on offense needs right now as they rebuild the offensive line. All those young guys are playing on it. I think Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth, I think they're part of the positives that can go with this group if things do take progressive steps forward this season. But they need, I think, a galvanizing leader. They need a system that allows that leader to kind of have success, and then everyone can kind of feed off that success, and then that kind of builds thing there. And then you'll get to the space where we're talking about with the defense, where there's just a natural progression of leadership. And then back to Michael, our first caller who called in, maybe that's what they're hoping, is that Russell Wilson sets a tone that allows Justin Fields to rise up into. And then there's a succession plan there already. And then all of a sudden, Justin Fields is a good leader for your offense. Bada bing, bada boom. You've now fixed the problem that was the void of leadership and a sense of a foundation for the offense to build off of moving forward with bringing in young players and them knowing who to look up to on that side of the ball. So very good question, Trace. But I think the identity is going to be get behind Russell Wilson. Don't lean on him on the field too much. He's not going to throw 40, 50 times a game. You want him to throw 20 to 30 times a game and let the run game be the balance of the team. But I think he's going to be the face of the offense, and he's going to be the guy that kind of helps Arthur Smith and Mike Tomlin oversee it from the player side of things. So very good question, Trace. Let's get to some of these other questions here. We got Craig Coleman from Dayton, Ohio, asking about a specific red zone package. I think this could be interesting. Take it away, Craig.
Hey, Chris Carter, how you doing? This is Craig Coleman from Dayton, Ohio. I have a scenario to give you. We was rated number 25 in the league last year as far as touchdowns in the red zone. I'm thinking if we had a red zone offense to where beyond the 20 we bring in Justin Fields and Patterson, along with the other weapons that we have on offense, I think that will boost our red zone touchdown capacity up, way up. What are your thoughts? Thank you. You have a blessed day.
Thank you for the question, Craig. Appreciate everyone calling in to the Locked On Steelers hotline at 412-223-6644. Let's get to this question. Craig is right. The Steelers ranked 25th in red zone offense last year. That has to be a lot better, especially if they're going to be running the football. But I think part of that is finding continuity on offense. I'll say this to your question, Craig. I don't think that something like that would be out of the question for the Steelers. I think it's something that if Arthur Smith designed it, they could certainly draw it up and they could make it part of the offense. But I don't think it's going to be a bread and butter. Like if it is, it's going to be more of a gadget situation where they just catch guys off guard occasionally in the red zone or like on a 2-point conversion. And, it gets that, but you can't live off gimmicks. You can sprinkle them in. So when they get to the red zone, honestly, you want the red zone to be Russell Wilson or whoever's your starting quarterback with that bruising offensive line, and either Najee Harris or Jalen Warren just pounding and driving the defense back and back and back. Or if the defense is biting too hard at the line of scrimmage, play action, quick hit, guy in the end zone, wide open, because the run game's working so hard. I think the gadget idea, it's smart. It's a good idea to have in your back pocket. But the Steelers will not make that a bread and butter thing. Now, let's say Justin Fields just wins the quarterback job. I don't think it's going to happen. But let's say he just takes off a Russell Wilson, and then they want to throw in Cordell Patterson there. That would certainly be something that I think could be really exciting to make people have to think about. I also think Cordell Patterson possesses the versatility to make them think about that, even with Russell Wilson on the field, or just it being a normal play where they're like, hey, that guy can line up in the backfield and run the ball. We better keep our eyes on him. And, oh, man, there's actually two guys that can run the ball because Najee Harris or Jalen Warren's out here while he's out there, and there's George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth. Okay, we got some calculations to make. I do think that there's something there, but not the whole package just being the red zone thing. And I don't think you were saying that, Craig, but I just want to clarify for our listeners that if you're getting that idea, I think it could be an idea. I think Arthur Smith, if he pulls it out, I wouldn't be surprised. But do not think that that's going to be anybody's bread and butter for the Steelers red zone offense. I got a few more questions I want to get to here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We'll do that the other side of this next break here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is also brought to you by Gametime. Download Gametime as an app on your phone to buy tickets to all your favorite events without it being a stressful endeavor. You can also go to their website, gametime.co. And now that we know the NFL schedule that is out, it's time to book your Steelers tickets ahead of time, and the best place to do that is with Gametime. Listen, don't get caught up trying to waiting too long, and then all of a sudden your travel's a lot more expensive. Gametime's got the best prices right now. It's the fast and easy way to buy tickets to all your sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. You get killer deals on last-minute tickets and the best price guarantee that can't be beat, so that you can save up to 60% off buying tickets even last minutes for sports, concerts, and so many events. If you want Christmas Day tickets to Steelers versus Chiefs, guess what? Gametime's got that. You want home opener against the Chargers? You bet they got that too. Plan your trip to Acrisure Stadium to root on the Steelers today with Gametime. Or if you just want to come, if you're in Pittsburgh and you want to just experience some of the concerts that are going around, they just added Childish Gambino to the fall, and all different artists are starting to book everywhere on tour. That's why Gametime is the best place to go right now. Plus, Gametime's best price guarantee means that you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less somewhere else, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase, or go to their website, gametime.co. Terms and conditions apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, repping my Pittsburgh Crawfords Negro League shirt here. But let's get back into the Locked On Steelers podcast and taking more of your questions here. This is going to be a question. I know some people are probably like, wait a minute, we've discussed this a little bit, but I want to give my man Andrew Plains to get his point out here about the offensive tackle situation with Fautanu and Broderick Jones, because that's another thing. It's going to be a touchy subject all throughout OTAs and then all through training camp until we see the depth chart being settled. Take it away, Andrew.
Hey, Chris, this is Andrew from Plains, Pennsylvania, and I'm actually calling about the possibility involving two people. I don't want to butcher his name, but Troy Fautanu and Broderick Jones. Now, blindside needs to be a better pass blocker, and that is clearly Troy Fautanu. Do you think there's a chance that he could be our left tackle going into the season and maybe even going forward? I love the show. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Andrew, for the question. As always, 412-223-6644. And we appreciate the question here. And listen, do I think it's a possibility? Sure. Mike Tomlin left that open door for a reason. I think he's trying to stay as unpredictable as possible. But I think the Steelers also know, like, look, trying to pigeonhole guys into situations that you don't have to doesn't always work. Trust me, they've tried it recently. It hasn't worked. And I think that they're kind of just being open to the idea that, hey, things can happen. But I'll tell you this much. The Steelers plan to put Fautanu at right tackle. Here's the other thing about Broderick Jones. You're right. I think that Fautanu with technique is a better pass protector right now than Broderick Jones. But I think Broderick Jones' ceiling as a pass protector is so much higher because of his length, because of his height, his size. And I think that that's what you kind of want. And I also think he can learn those things. And he showed that he can learn those things last year as he got to be a better offensive lineman throughout the year as it progressed. I also think Troy Fautanu can be an ideal right tackle for the Steelers with his mobility and ability to move out in space. And it would also negate his lack of height. When you're talking about that being important for offensive linemen, especially blindside tackles. And I think that's where Broderick Jones, that's where he's going to want to be. That's what the Steelers are going to want him to be. He's the prototype for that spot. Let that be that and move forward with that. But let's say Broderick Jones just ain't getting it done. Let's just say he's just not comfortable on the left side. He wants to go back to the right. I think the Steelers will keep that in mind to be like, hey, be prepared to support each other. If one's not comfortable with the other side, you guys are going to have to flip sometimes. That could very well be part of the equation here. I think the Steelers are keeping their options open. It's kind of like what I was talking about with the quarterback situation, hedging your bets, kind of just being open to the idea that they can play either side. But the plan is Fautanu to the right, Broderick Jones to the left. They'll see how things work out. If things don't work out, they'll reevaluate. But I think they're high on both of these guys, and they'll expect them both to adjust to a switch like that. All right, let's get to some more questions here. I'm going to actually pair together these two questions because they're on the same subject. They're on the same person, but they're from different people, and I didn't want to deny either of these people their chance to get their question on the show. So first of all, let's give it up for Owen, all the way from England.
Hi, Chris, you handsome devil. This is Owen Prutton here from Hertfordshire, England, and I was hoping you might be able to explain exactly what it is about Najee Harris's game that makes him not a great running back. Is it his stats? Is it where he was drafted? Because I just don't see it, honestly. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your question there. Let's also get in. Let's get in Ralph from Pittsburgh. Again, London to Pittsburgh, or not London, but England to Pittsburgh. That's pretty crazy. But Ralph from Pittsburgh also has a question about Najee Harris. I'll let Ralph get his question, and then you'll get my response to both of them.
Hey, what's up, Chris? I love the show, you bird. Keep it up, man. You're doing an awesome job. And this is Ralph from Pittsburgh, man. More of a, I guess you just said it's a question or a statement, either or, but I just don't like the fact of how everyone is just overriding Najee, like, oh, yeah, get him out of here. Not even taking into consideration that 3 years in a row, over 1,000-yard back of rushing, not just all purpose, but rushing dudes. And, like, every down back, like, are you serious? We're really about to get rid of that? Who's going to replace that? You feel me? Like, that is Derrick Henry 2.0. Just tell me if you agree, man. Like, I think I'm the only one left on the Najee train, but I really don't like my man go. But love the show. Keep it up, man.
Thank you, Ralph, for your question. Appreciate everyone who calls in, and thank you to Owen as well. So let me address a few things here. One, I think that there are people who are down on Najee Harris simply because he has not broken out yet. And you can, I think we can all agree on that, right? Like, Najee Harris, he's had 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons. That's solid. It's not superstar in mode in the NFL, but that's consistency and that's showing potential. And here's where I do agree with both of you. If your point is like, hey, why are people dismissing his accomplishment of doing that in what the Steelers offense is? Because I do think that you're being dishonest, because a lot of the same people who are saying Najee Harris is so bad because he couldn't get 1,500 yards in any of his first 3 seasons in the NFL from rushing. By the way, he got 1,600 plus in his first year from total yards from scrimmage. But he can't make these big plays in this offense. Those are the same people that also said that the offensive line was terrible, that the offensive coordinator was terrible, that we're chanting "Fire Matt Canada" every week. So is the running back supposed to make up for all of that? Because they don't, and we know that, and that's why running back isn't as valued of a position in the NFL. You want to have everything else kind of working around the running back very well, and that kind of leads to their success. But there are very few running backs, if any, who do that with bad offensive line play. Derrick Henry needed good offensive line play to get going. I don't think that Najee Harris is the second coming of Derrick Henry. I do think that he could be a very dominant back in his own way. I actually think that Najee Harris, in his natural abilities, has a lot of things that could compare to Le'Veon Bell, because Le'Veon Bell, if you go back to when he was at his best, it was when the Steelers offensive line was kicking butt. And you go back to Marquise Pouncey, David DeCastro, Marcus Gilbert, Alejandro Villanueva, Ramon Foster, like when they was just, we're coming and you can't stop us. That's what afforded him the ability to stop and start and pick the hole and jump here and do that. And he had great vision. And people always get on Najee Harris for his vision. But go back and look at Le'Veon Bell's rookie year vision. Go back and look at that year, because that was the year that Marquise Pouncey got taken out in the first game of the season. And the Steelers were trying to figure out a lot of other things in the offensive line. David DeCastro was in his second year, I think. There was a lot of issues going on with the Steelers at the time, and they were in a very much a rebuild mode, and Le'Veon Bell wasn't lighting it up right away. Now, he showed potential at times, but he wasn't lighting it up. And that's where I think Najee Harris is consistent. He's not going to be the flashy guy that gets the home run play, but he's going to be the guy that gets you the yards that you need, and that's something that you need in this offense right now. A guy who can continue to move the sticks, continue to fall forward, continue to make the right plays at the right time to get you the crucial yards. And if he's on a better offense with a better offensive line, which we think it will be, a better offensive coordinator who we think Arthur Smith is versus Matt Canada, and better quarterback play, let's also point that into a factor, because when teams respect the quarterback a little bit more, they back off the running back and they don't try to crowd them as much. And I think that's a big part of what Najee Harris needs to have happen at some point. Is just, hey, let's see what happens here. Go back and look at Rashard Mendenhall. Not that he was a great running back for the Steelers, but look at, people used to talk about how that guy didn't have any vision or anything because he couldn't make things happen in 2008 or 2009 or whatever. And as soon as they just got Marquise Pouncey, that the one guy in the middle of the line that changed everything, Rashard Mendenhall was taken off. He was just destroying people left and right. Now, again, I'm not saying that Najee Harris is going to destroy everyone left and right this year, but I do think he's going to be better, and that's why I do think that I think some people, down him because he's a first-round pick, and people don't like running backs being first-round picks because they want to push that narrative that they're not valuable. And listen, there's certainly value to them. And there's value that I think there's lessened versus other positions because of the way that today's NFL works. But all that being said, I think that if you're a Steelers fan who thinks Najee Harris can be a lot better this season, and not less because of him, but more so because of just the situation that'll be around him, you aren't alone. There are quite a few people that think that way. And I am a person who thinks that I think Najee Harris could blow up this year and get some big numbers. This is also why I said that they should have given his 5th-year extension, because there's a chance that if he does that, he could just be like, all right, did my one big year. Now I'm out and I'm hot on the market and I can, get whatever money I want there. That's where I think Najee Harris, I think he could get there. Not for sure. We don't know for sure, but I think those are good questions, because I do think that I do think the team it would behoove the team to keep him around for multiple seasons. I think that he is part of the answer on the field and even in the locker room as they're trying to rebuild this culture situation there. But those are the questions we have time for today. We have several more that we will get to over time here at the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. Find me here every day, Monday through Friday, on the Locked On Steelers podcast, covering your Pittsburgh Steelers. Back tomorrow, getting you ready for OTAs and all the storylines that are going to be coming there right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.